Hi everybody, in traditional economic theory, we always assume the objective of firms to be profit maximization. But why? Well, one reason is for reinvestment. If a business is making large profits, they can reinvest that profit back into the business in the form of new capital, upgraded capital, new technology, R&D, that's research and development, innovation. If you take pharmaceutical companies and electronics companies, this is a big deal for them to make huge profits to reinvest into R&D. Another reason is to pay greater dividends for shareholders. Shareholders are the owners of a company. Without their finance, there wouldn't be a company. So to reward them with greater dividends. Dividends is a share of the profit. Another reason is to allow for lower costs. If you remember, the profit equation is total revenue minus total costs. So a business might be keeping costs very low in order to keep their profits very high, and therefore can pass on those lower costs to consumers via lower prices. Thus consumers benefit and the business benefits as a result if their market share increases. Another reason is to reward entrepreneurship. When a business starts, that's entrepreneurship activity, that's risk-taking activity, and there needs to be a reward to that risk. So maximizing profit is the reward for risk-taking activity when a business starts. Profit maximization occurs at a very specific point. It occurs when marginal cost equals marginal revenue. And I've shown that here on the diagram. Why does it occur there? Well, any quantity to the right of MC equals MR cannot be maximizing profit because cost is always higher than revenue. So those units there will always be generating a loss and therefore will be reducing profit. So they can't be maximizing profit. What about any point to the left? Why not stop here, where revenue is so much higher than cost? Well, why stop there when each extra unit is going to bring in more revenue than cost, i.e. each extra unit is going to generate profit. So as long as marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, the next unit will always generate more profit and therefore always increase profit in the end. So the only logical place to stop if we're looking to maximize profit is where no more extra profit can be made. And that occurs where MC is equal to MR, right there. But in the real world, there could be many businesses that decide not to profit maximize. Why not? Well, one reason, they don't know their MC and MR, they don't compute it. Well, that's going to make it very difficult, obviously. But another reason is to avoid scrutiny. If a firm is making very large profits, competition authorities, regulators might look at them and think, you might be doing something dodgy. Maybe the business is charging high prices. Maybe they think the business is taking shortcuts with costs. Maybe they think standards are low in the business. And therefore, these regulators might come in and investigate. And usually the outcomes of investigations are very anti the interests of businesses. Usually it might be, we're going to force you to reduce your prices, or you have to improve your health and safety. You have to use more environmentally friendly methods of production or something. Usually outcomes that increase costs or that will reduce revenues for the business. So scrutiny is not in the interest of a business. A business may therefore not profit maximize, lower their profits just to avoid that scrutiny, to avoid investigation. Another reason is that key stakeholders could be harmed if a business goes too hard with profit max. We're going to look at this in more detail in a second, and that's going to lead us to our next objective of profit satisficing. But also other objectives may be more appropriate. Let's look at those other objectives by focusing on satisficing first. Profit satisficing occurs when a business sacrifices profit to satisfy as many key stakeholders as possible. That word satisfice is a combination of two words, satisfy and sacrifice, and that leads us to this core definition here. And this idea overcomes the third major issue of profit maximization, and that is if a business goes too hard for profit, key stakeholders could be harmed in the process. A stakeholder is anybody that has an interest in how that business is performing. And I've written down some key stakeholders here. So let's see if any of these guys could lose out as a result of profit max. Well, shareholders, unlikely. They're going to be quite happy with profit max. They receive higher dividends. Managers could receive bonuses and higher incomes, so they're unlikely to suffer. Consumers could suffer, though, if excess prices are being charged. Workers could suffer, and their trade unions that represent them also not be happy if wages are very low as a result of cost cutting. The government may not like it if excess prices are charged for consumers and if wages are very low for workers. And environmental groups might not like it if costs are being cut and the environment takes a hit. Maybe it's pollution, maybe it's resource degradation if waste is dumped into rivers and things. So they might not be happy with how a business is performing if they're cutting costs by profit maximizing. What's the problem though for a business if they harm some of these key stakeholders? Well, if you harm consumers, you can suffer from very bad reputation. If you harm workers, workers could strike. That's certainly not in the interests of you as a business, right? Trade unions not being happy with it. The government, what could they do? We've already said they can investigate. If they're not happy with how the business is doing, they can investigate and the outcomes can be very anti the business interests. Environmental groups can protest. They could attack on social media. And in this modern world, reputation is a big, big thing for businesses. A business does not want their reputation to be harmed. So a business has got to be very careful not to harm these key stakeholders if they go for profit too hard, and therefore satisficing might be a more appropriate objective for businesses in this modern day world. But maybe other objectives are more appropriate. Let's have a look at some others like revenue max. Revenue maximization occurs when marginal revenue is equal to zero. We covered that in my revenue video. Let's go straight to our diagram. We're going to put profit max on first. Profit max was where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Let's call that quantity QP. But we have to read the price from the average revenue curve. Average revenue is price, remember. So we take that up. Let's call that price PP, the profit max price. But revenue maximization occurs where marginal revenue is zero. That occurs here. And we'll call that quantity QR. And again, we have to read the price from the AR curve. So we'll call that price PR for revenue max. And immediately we can see two good reasons why a company might want to revenue max. The first is for economies of scale benefits. We can see that the revenue max quantity is greater than the profit max quantity. So with that comes greater growth, greater economies of scale, lower average costs, and therefore potentially lower prices for consumers. So there is that benefit there. We can also see the idea of predatory pricing here. We can see the revenue max price is lower than the profit max price, which means a dirty, dodgy tactic like predatory pricing could take place. This is when a firm will undercut its rival on purpose, sacrificing profit to do so in order to drive out competitors from the market here. So we can see that objective as well on the diagram. But the third reason is an interesting behavioral economics idea. The idea of the principal-agent problem, that there is a divorce between ownership and control. The owners, the principals, are the shareholders, but those who control, the agents, are the managers. And there is a vast difference. Those who own do not control. And therefore managers, those who control the business, they run the day in, day out business. They might decide to revenue max, to use that as leverage to go to shareholders for greater perks in their job, a swanky brand new office, amazing health insurance, a brand new company car, an amazing bonus at the end of the year. Managers might do that using revenue max, which might be easier to do for them in that business, to use as justification for perks in the job, benefiting from this principal agent problem. We can't ignore the real life nature of that reason there, and that's another good reason for revenue maximization. But a business might use a different objective like sales maximization. Sales maximization, also known as growth maximization. The idea here is that a business wants to become as large as they possibly can be without making a loss, and that occurs at break even, where average cost equals average revenue. We can add that to our diagram here. So AC equals AR is there. That gives us a quantity, let's call it QS, and the price we are at AR, so we can just take the price across, let's call that PS. Okay, great. Again, from this diagram, we can get some core reasons why a business might want to do this and maximize their growth here, maximize their output. One reason, again, is economies of scale, as we said before. Another reason, though, is that this price represents the limit price. If you price it break even at normal profit, it takes away the incentive for new firms to enter the market. Thus, you are limiting competition. So this is not like predatory pricing where you're trying to drive out competition, a dirty tactic there. This is a different dirty tactic where you try and limit competition. Both price strategies are illegal because they restrict competition, but a business might still go for it. So there's a reason there. Another reason is the same as what we said above, the principal agent problem. There is a divorce between ownership and control. So managers might use growth or sales as leverage to go for greater perks in their job when they approach shareholders. The same idea, but now using growth or sales as their leverage to go for these great perks. But another reason is to flood the market. A benefit of producing loads of output and selling it in the market is you flood the market, and therefore loads and loads of the consumers become aware of your product. As they become more aware, as they see your product everywhere, they develop loyalty towards it. And then down the line, you can change your objective away from sales maximization towards maybe a profit max objective. You take companies like Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, Costa Coffee in the UK, all have used sales maximization to develop loyalty, to flood the market, and now they're looking all to change their objective towards making more profit. But there are other objectives that businesses might follow too. Let's look at those. Survival is another objective that businesses might use as a short-run objective if they're entering a hyper-competitive market. So if they believe in their product, they might want to go for it still and enter the market, but just survive in the short run. In that period of time, they want to spread their brand awareness. They want to make sure consumers are aware of their amazing product. And if they are successful in just surviving that period of time, even if they're making losses, once people are aware of their product and they've developed some loyalty, that's when they can start to change their objective more towards making some profit. So survival might be a short-term objective in hyper-competitive markets. Public sector organizations will have very different objectives. Their objective is always to maximize society interest, maximize the public interest, maximize society welfare. And therefore, they're going to aim to price and produce where demand equals supply, because that is allocative efficiency in the market. Well, we know that demand is the AR curve, and that's the price, so that's demand. Marginal cost is the supply curve. So where demand equals supply, that's where it occurs on a business diagram. That's going to be their objective, to keep prices low, to make sure quantity is high, to maximize society welfare. But then we also have businesses that will pursue corporate social responsibilities, recognizing their social responsibility. And again, in this modern day world, following ethics, following social responsibility is becoming more and more important. So that could be giving to charity, that could be producing sustainably, environmental sustainability, that could be paying your workers well, or even your suppliers. If they're farmers and things in the developing world, paying them an appropriate wage, or it could be acting ethically. Like for example, The Body Shop do not test their products on animals, they only test their products in laboratories. Ethical responsibilities there. So that's all very important stuff as well. 3 major objectives there. But to sum up, guys, this is such an important diagram. Those first 4 objectives of profit max, profit satisficing, sales max, and revenue max are absolutely fundamental, and all of those can be shown on this diagram. We can add satisficing on as well. So satisficing occurs at any point between profit max and sales max. So anywhere in this quantity range here. And we can say that anywhere within there is profit satisficing. So that is your very powerful diagram, which shows all the key objectives of firms. And that's it for this very important topic area, an area that comes up a lot in exams. Hopefully you understand that and find it really interesting. I'll see you all in the next video.